welcome everyone here today. This is our Easter service, and we are in the midst of a series. And the question that we asked 3 weeks ago is, would you invite Jesus to our church? And so, as you can see, the sanctuary looks fantastic. Everyone's dove in and redid all the pews and actually made the carpet look good. And that color right there is taupe, which I learned along the way. I didn't know that. Mark had the cross put up, which looks fantastic, and all of this new beginning. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of, because one of our friends here from the church actually found a plate at like a garage sale or Goodwill or one of those things. And they found this plate when the church had celebrated 40 years here. And we looked at the plate, we looked at the sanctuary, it looked the exact same. And so now we're at like 48 years or 49 years or 46 years or whatever the years are. And so we got this face up, and it's great because you want to celebrate those new beginnings. And so we try to celebrate in those new beginnings. And we stopped and said, look, let's take a look at the things that we should talk about the most. And the first thing is that as we have this new beginning, would this be a church that you would invite Jesus to? And so each week we've talked about having the Spirit of God, having His Spirit being a part of this, and then the people for each of us to know that God's Spirit is with us. And last week when we ended up, we talked about there's promises that God has for each of us. And so I'm going to talk to you today about those promises. Before I do, yesterday we had an Easter egg hunt. And for the Easter egg hunt, all the little kiddos come in, and it's so much fun. I'm thankful to Rachel, who is so willing to spearhead that. I'm thankful to Kim, who's willing to come in to take pictures. I'm thankful for the Easter Bunny that showed up. I'm not allowed to say his name because he's here today, and he's done with pictures right now. But the Easter Bunny, the entire time, literally said nothing. And do you know why? Because bunnies can't talk. And so every time there's a little kid, I'm like, hey, come on over here and take a picture of the Easter Bunny. And I gotta tell you, little kids see that Easter Bunny, they're like, yeah, I'm not quite so sure. So it's funny because you see this battle between these little kids, and the parents are like, listen, we came all this way, you're going to take a picture of the Easter Bunny. And that kind of thing. And so they're crying and yelling and screaming, and some of them are smiling, and it's this time where you see this little battle that's going on, but they're trying to capture a moment. And so whether the child is happy, I saw some pictures of some past pictures with kids and the Easter Bunny, and the Easter Bunny in those pictures completely freaked me out. The Easter Bunny has matured over time, it looks a lot better. So you think that they would be good pictures, but sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Regardless, there's memories that we hold on to it. And so that day was yesterday, and today is a new day, and today is the day that we can hold on to the promises that Jesus gives us. And we're going to talk about those. But today also happens to be, of all days, April 1st, which we also know as April Fool's Day. And so, if you look at why April Fool's Day is on April 1st, there's different theories that are out there. One of the theories is that the French actually changed their calendar from their calendar that they used to the Gregorian calendar. And so, it used to be April 1st, that was the day that they celebrated the New Year. And so they changed over, and to this new calendar, people would still celebrate New Year's on April 1st, and they would say, look at that fool over there, celebrating New Year's. And so that's how it became the Fools. And because of that, okay, well, we call it a Fool's Day, we have to try and pull pranks. So every year on April Fool's Day, we celebrate and we look forward to having those pranks. They're going to be all over the place today, so be ready. Google has posted Waldo in all of its maps. So if you go out to the maps and you want to go and try and find a place you're going to go to, you get to play Where's Waldo? And when you find Waldo, you can then travel all over the world with Waldo and try and find him in all these different places. Here's the thing, though. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what they're saying. It could be an April Fool's joke. Heinz came out today with their newest product, chocolate mayonnaise. Well, just saying it almost makes me want to throw someone's Easter lid. I wouldn't do that. But chocolate mayonnaise. There's a company in Sweden. If you would like to buy Swedish air, you can buy fresh Swedish air. It's bottled. And so you can pay whatever you want. Please let me know if you buy one and how much it costs you to have it shipped here. And when you open it, I like to take some pictures and have Kim take some pictures as well with the Easter Bunny, with all those things all together. But these are things that are taking place because it is April Fool's Day. But this day is about promises. And so what we're sharing today isn't about anything that, at the end of the day, we're going to pull the rug out from underneath it. See, today we're going to start in John chapter 3, and I want you to understand why this day is so important and how it actually ties into April Fool's Day. This verse in John chapter 3 says this. Just literally it says, you should not be surprised at my saying you must be born again. Now, we all know John 3:16, that for God so loved the world, and the discussion that took place, that for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. And whenever we look at that conversation, our assumption is that Jesus was talking to 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 or however many people, the entire city of Jerusalem, or anybody that would listen. And the reality of it is, he was having a conversation with one man. One man who was a Pharisee. One man who was on the Sanhedrin. One man who was very well respected in the entire Jewish community. And one man that everyone looked to for guidance and who led. And so they're having this conversation back and forth between them, and he says, you must be born again. And this rocked this guy's world. See, they're all looking for this Messiah. They're all looking for this one who's going to reign. They're all looking for this one who's going to bring this power and this army, who's going to come in, who's going to change everything, who's going to bring in a new day, because today is a new day. And all of a sudden, there's a one-on-one conversation between one of the highest religious officials and this carpenter, and he hits him with this. He says, you must be born again. And it makes no sense. It makes no sense because in his mind, it's a physical birth. But when Jesus talks to us, when Jesus shares things with us, he's talking about so much more. See, there's a spiritual awakening that takes place in that birth. There's a spiritual awakening that takes place for each one of us personally when we are born again. And so when we talk about Easter, we talk about April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day pulls pranks and has hoaxes. And at Easter, on Sunday, on that first day, the disciples had to make a decision. And let me tell you what the decision each one of them made. The disciples chose to be born again. And how do we know that? Well, if you look at their lives, if you look at their entire bodies of work as disciples, a change had taken place in each one of them. In this, what some people tried to have as a hoax, and they were willing to die for it. Because at some point, sometime, they looked at all of the evidence. They looked at the evidence of a stone that was so large that people have done research on it, and it would take 20 guys to roll this stone out of place and roll it back up the hill. And by the way, that stone, when it fell into place, it's like putting a cork into a wine bottle. It would take 20 guys, and you know what? There's only 12 of them. A stone that when it was sealed not only with rope, but around the entire area with the clay that was on it, had the king, the emperor's seal on it. And nobody breaks that seal without the emperor, the most powerful guy of that time, knowing it. And the same thing that when we look at that seal, those same soldiers then guarded this tomb. And this wasn't just like one guy. We're talking 16 of the greatest soldiers at that time. 16 SEALs, 16 Army Rangers, however it is that you want to look at it, 16 Green Berets, whatever. 16 of the greatest military force guarding this for one night to make sure that the body wasn't stolen. And here's the thing. Some people are like, well, maybe the religious people at the time had the body stolen just to support that. Why? They wanted nothing to do with it. Nobody cared about him. He wasn't the king that they were looking for, so why would anybody back him? But here's the thing, too, on top of it. When this huge stone was all the things broken and pulled back in front of the greatest military force of all time, when they walked into the tomb, his grave clothes are still there. See, if you and I were going to steal the body, we would steal the whole body as quickly as we could. We'd run in, you grab a leg, you grab a leg, you grab an arm, you grab an arm, let's get out of here as fast as we can. You know, we drugged the guys outside, we got them looking another way, we pulled a diversion, let's just get out of here. And yet the clothes were there, and they're exactly how he was laid in the tomb, without his body. But then as we learn today, on top of it all, with all the evidence that's there in front of them, there still had to take place a personal experience, a one-on-one time. That for all of us, if we don't have that moment, we don't live our faith. And how do we know then that these guys had that moment? The Bible shares that they had the one-on-one time with the resurrected Jesus. But let's look at their life as a whole. If you go in and look at the disciples, they were willing to be saucy. One of them was. They were willing to be boiled in oil. One of them was, and they didn't kill him, so they put him on an island. One of them lived to be 94 years old. You would think at 94 years old, he's not even having the conversation anymore. And yet he still was. You know what happened to him? They beat him to death with clubs at the age of 94. And he took it. Their lives were forever changed, not just based on the evidence, but because they had a time where this Jesus, who they couldn't find in the tomb because he wasn't there, this Jesus who physically wasn't there, all of a sudden physically came back to them. But the hoax wasn't a hoax. And this Jesus brought to them promises that only God himself could give. And it went back to a conversation that he didn't have one-on-one with his disciples. The disciples would have been on the rooftop with him listening, but he had it with someone who's looking for something else. And it's when those two collide, it's when we have those moments of, God, I expect this, and God, I'm looking for this, and God, you have to fit into this mold, and God, I have you in this box, and God, this is what I'm expecting of you, and all of a sudden, boom, we step back, and God goes and touches us for like, I never saw it coming. I never saw it coming. And it's at that moment that God gives us that new day. Yeah, there was Friday, and it was excruciating. But on Sunday, all the evidence that points to it, there's still a moment that we can each have personally, still to this day, knowing that we too can be born again. Let's dive into those promises today. Mark is where we're going to start. Mark chapter 16, verse 7. These are the promises. And if you're sitting here today and you're thinking, listen, John, you don't know what I've gone through. I don't. Listen, John, you don't know my past. I don't. Listen, John, you don't know my life. You don't know my story. You can't understand where I've been. Maybe I can, and maybe I don't. But the amazing thing is, for each one of these disciples, each person that has chosen him, they were all where you are. And he knew. And it mattered to him, and you mattered to him. Mark chapter 16, verse 7, this is how the verse starts. It says, but go tell his disciples and Peter, and we'll stop here for a moment. The angel is in the tomb. They pulled it back. And here's the conversation that he's having with two women, both named Mary. One's the mother of one of the disciples, one is Mary Magdalene. This is a big thing within the Bible because women are not named. They're second-class citizens at this time. They were that important to God and that important to Jesus, and they were that important to write their names down. This is not a normal thing. In this culture, you wouldn't even include them. But it mattered that much for them to know that name because God knows their name. And so this angel has showed up to them. And he literally says, hey, don't be freaked out. And yet everywhere in the Bible, when an angel shows up, you know what happens? People are completely freaked out. And so this angel shows up. And as he's standing there, he says this, but go. So he gives them a directive. He says, go. Listen, you came here to the tomb. You came here expecting to find Jesus. But he's been telling you the whole time that he's not going to be here. And guess what? He's not here. But you went to the last place that you left him. And so today I'm going to challenge you. I want you to go to the last place that you left Jesus. Because that last place that you left Jesus is where you're going to find life. If your personal struggles have been for a year, 2 years, a month, 5 days, whatever it might be, and you're like, man, it is when I had this moment, when I was on fire the most, when this loving carpenter, this guy just loved me who I was, that's where you're going to start to find Jesus today. But you have to get past the past. You have to move on from it. So you can grab a hold of that life for a moment, but it's time to start a new day. Here's how I know that. But go to the disciples and Peter. Peter's the one that denied Jesus 3 times. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. He denied the first time, hey, you should get my sword. He denied the second time with an oath. That means he was swearing. He was swearing. Because he didn't want to be associated with this guy that loved and cared for him for 3 years. And the third time, when he backed out on the third time, when he said enough said the third time in that denial, it was face to face with this guy that just loved him, cared for him wherever he was. Now, it says here, you go and you tell all the disciples, and you make sure that you include Peter. Because all the other disciples, listen, Peter, you were told that you're going to deny him, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then you didn't. What's wrong with you? But those same disciples also ran when it was time for them to run. Those same disciples took off when it got tough. Those same disciples took the ball and they all went home. And now 2 women are going to show up to them and say, listen, you got to come see this. You have to see this. And Peter's over there in the corner going, oh, man, I wish I could see that. No. Peter, they said for you to come as well. Now, if I'm Peter, there's one of 2 things that I'm going to love about this. Oh my goodness, I'm back in the group. I'm back in the club. Got the super secret handshake. I've got all the great things that come with it. This is so exciting. We all get to go to this together. Or I'm thinking, uh-oh. Oh man. He said to the disciples, and he wants me there. It's time for me to meet my Maker. And that's what I'm thinking if I'm Peter. But Jesus said to them, listen, all of you, you go get these disciples, you get each one. You know what? You come to me. Make sure that Peter is a part of this. And he says this, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. Peter, it's a new day. Disciples, it's a new day. You ran when it got tough. Haven't we all done that? Man, I was so on fire, and I was doing so great. I was walking by faith, and I was reading my Bible, and I was studying, I was praying. And I ran. I just took off. I quit. I gave up. But, I didn't deny Christ not once, not twice, not 3 times. When we run, we deny him. When we hide, we deny him. We choose not to love others, we deny him. We deny. And yet, God comes back for us. You know why? Because he loves us. And just as he had told them, he tells you this today. Today is a new day. Friday was excruciating, but today is the day that brings life. So you can go back to that moment. That's okay. But it's time for you to come forward because today is a new day, and that's God's first promise to you. Let's move to John chapter. Well, before I go there, let's look at Lamentations. Lamentations is a book that was written by Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. In Lamentations, Jeremiah, who was preaching the same, this is modern day, where we would be in modern day Iraq, Baghdad. He is preaching for 40 years. 40 years, and nobody listened. 40 years. Now, some of you are really like, oh, it's a lot like marriage. No, it's not. Okay? That's selective listening, selective hearing. Nobody listened. And yet, this is what Jeremiah had to say. He said, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. No matter what your struggles are, no matter where you're at, you're terrible with your finances, God's compassion is on you. You've had a loss recently, God's compassion will find you. You're someone that is anxious, you worry, you're not sure what tomorrow's going to hold, God's compassion is on you. You doubt at times, you fear at times, your life is an everyday struggle, God's compassion falls on you. Every one of us. So that first promise is today is that new day. We'll go to John chapter 20 now. Because now, he is before these disciples. He said, go get them all. Get every single one of them. Make sure that you bring Peter. In John chapter 20, verse 19, we're going to look at verse 19, verse 21, and verse 26. On the evening of the first day of the week, so this is that night, Sunday night, the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked. Okay? The doors are locked because we want to make sure nobody gets in. These are the same guys locking the door that supposedly rolled back a however big stone and ripped apart the entire tomb, and yet these same guys that supposedly did all this are going to trust that the door's going to be locked and it's going to hold God out. The doors are locked, but the door's locked for fear of the Jewish leaders. So they've been told, listen, Christ is risen, and he's coming for each one of us. And yet, they're still locked out from God. because we live in fear. Man, if you found out this about me, man, if you knew about this about me, if you knew what my struggle was, and we lock it tighter and tighter and tighter and leave God out from it. And I'm here to tell you today, if he could roll back that 2,000-pound stone that was corked in and taken all the stuff in it in front of the greatest military force it ever lived, he can do that for you. That's a promise. He proved it. And the best part about it is, he is willing to. He wants to. He wants to reach right into that area and say, listen, I can handle this. I've got this. That Peter guy that I was talking about, you know what happened with him? He built the church in which we now worship. The guy that denied him once, twice, 3 times, last time to his face, he built the church in which we get to worship. So that area that you've locked off from him, he's got it. He can step right into it at any time when you choose to allow him to. It says, with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, let me stop here for a second. One of your verses, or some of your versions may say this. It says, in the midst of them. In the midst, which means in the middle. So they're all standing there, they're checking the windows, they're making sure the doors are locked, and man, you deadbolt it? Yeah. Got the chain on? Yeah. Okay, put the lights out. Nobody make any noise. Shh. Someone peek out the blinds, ever check it, look, watch out for the Jews. And all of a sudden there was Jesus standing in the midst of them. Luke chapter 24 says, they thought he was a ghost. He was there right in the middle of them. Which you and I would think the same thing. We're all looking this way, and all of a sudden, boom, there he is. In the midst of what they feel is their darkest hour. And they're hiding in fear. He says this, peace be with you. Peace be with you. See, God offers us a peace that only he can bring. But it's not just, oh, here's peace. It's active. That word be is active. Allow this peace to be every part of you. Allow it to permeate who you are. Allow it to rest in your spirit. And live that peace. You know why? Because your kids are going to have struggles. And they're coming to you and they need someone that's going to bring peace. And you're going to make a decision that, oh, you wish you never would have made. And you've got to turn to somewhere. And God's saying, my peace will be with you. And so when you fear, the biggest fear that you have, God can show up in the middle of it any time and bring that peace that only he can bring. He's gone. He's dead. The first time they see him, what does he say? Peace be with you. And this is how I know, by the way, that you and I didn't write this. Because if I wrote this, it'd have been, and then Jesus said to him, aren't you the dummy that ran? Thanks for giving up on me. And aren't you the guy, everyone else was standing close. Like, no, you were way on the outside, weren't you? Had to look over the top to see everything. And then once it got tough, you took off. You took 3 or 4 of the guys with you. And then Peter. Peter. Oh, I'm going to change your name to Deny. Deny the third, because you just deny. That's how we would have wrote this. That's how we would have handled it. When I needed you the most, you weren't there. And yet the one that loved them the most was. For each one of us, there's going to come a moment when we face our final moment. You know who's going to be there? The ones that love us the most. And if we know Christ, we can have and hold on to that peace. That peace can be with us. Verse 21, it continues. Again, second time, Jesus said, peace be with you. And then he adds this. He says, as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. See, there's a transfer that's taking place here. Because Jesus knows that his person, I can reach 5, I can reach 5,000, I can reach hundreds, at any time I can reach them, but I can't reach the entire world. People need to take this message. And so these disciples, the ones that got cut in half and rolled in oil and all that put their lives at stake for this because of this message, who got no fame, not at the time. They got no money. They didn't make anything from it. Even though this hoax thing that's going around, they were willing to live in such a way that people could tell the difference. I have a golf coach from when I was in high school. His name's Coach Hohenstein. Whenever I get a chance to get back home, I actually look for him because he does driveways and things like that. And so if there's people out doing driveways, he's the guy. filling in those driveways and taking care of people. He just loves people. And when I was in high school, we had a pretty good golf team for years and years. His sons, I got to play with them, and they were excellent. And we got to go through, and each year the team got stronger because those guys had started us and passed us on, and Coach stayed with the team. But the thing about Coach was, if you messed up, he would take his hand and put it on the back of your neck and kind of grab you and pull you in and give you a message. Well, I led the team in that because I did a lot of dumb stuff, and I was good at doing dumb stuff. But there were 2 times that when I look back at my high school golf career, these are the 2 moments that I think of, and it had nothing to do with me. We showed up at the district or regionals, whatever we were. We felt like we had a really good chance to move on. We had done a practice round, and we had a guy that was just shooting lights out. And we got there, and we showed up, and the guy that was shooting lights out was, I felt like, oh my goodness, he's going to be the guy to put us over the top. If the rest of us just play well, play our normal rounds of golf, we're going to, OSU, Scarlet Gray, whatever the next step was at the time. And I was so excited about it. And we got there, and we pulled into the parking lot, and this guy turned to the team and said, all right, guys, we're here, we're going to kick some. And he said it. And right next to him was Coach Hohenstein. Coach Hohenstein, who, born-again Christian, who lived his faith before us. And every one of us stopped and go, oh my goodness, I cannot believe he just said that. And we all just sat back in our seat because in our mind, he was in trouble. He put that mitt right on the back of this guy's head, and he just turned to him and said, hey, take that energy and save it for the course. Now, just a couple weeks before that, we had a guy, they changed our tee off, and they had this net that they used to you could hit into, and there was 4 big telephone posts. And he got up on this hole, and he swung back and hit it, and he smoked it, and it hit one of those telephone poles, and it came all the way back, actually behind him. So his first shot actually had negative distance. And he just walked over, and he put his driver down. He didn't change clubs or anything. And everyone's like looking around because, for me, I'm trying not to giggle, because, oh my goodness, that didn't just happen kind of thing. He took his driver, and he hit his driver off the ground, which is something you don't do. And he smacked the ball out there, and he went over, and he put the club down and threw it in his bag, and he was mad. He was stealing. And Coach walked over, and he kind of grabbed a hold of him, and he was like, go get the next one. See, we get so stuck in our struggles. We get so stuck in our lives that many times we take our energy in the wrong area. And so when I think of a person of faith, this was a guy who taught me a ton about golf, but he taught me more about what it means to love and care for others. Just by simply saying, focus your energy here. And just by simply saying, go and get the next one. And see, we can all relate to that. We have someone in our life that lives that hope and that faith. You know what Coach does today? I just shared with you, right? He does driveways. He does so much more than that. He shares the gospel on Facebook. He doesn't do it to offend. He does it to reach out and to care for others. Because he knows that life is precious. And he has God's peace in him. And he took this directive seriously. My peace be actively with you. And as the Father sent me, I am sending you. And we all want to have someone like that in our lives. But if we're believers, we need to be that someone in someone else's lives. Because we are called to be disciples and mentors and coaches and teachers and accountants and police officers and stay-at-home moms and friends and mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. Every opportunity that there is a heart involved means your heart is involved. And God is sending us. And we can walk with that peace. Last verse here, verse 26, watch what it says. They have a conversation further. He says, a week later, he comes back to his disciples. They were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. And Thomas was called the doubter because he was like, man, I'm not believing any of this until I can put my hands on the wounds, all kind of stuff. But at least Thomas was courageous enough, right? I mean, for our faith, when it comes down to it, okay, I need proof, and I need to see that proof, and you need to show me that proof. Well, I just gave you a bunch of proof at the beginning. How could 12 guys roll back a stone that would take 20 that was sealed, break all the way apart in front of the greatest military force at the time. How could that possibly happen? And then when it showed up, they didn't just take the body. The grave closers showed that none of this makes sense until we put God into the equation. So he says to him, though the doors were locked, I just find this amusing to me. We're going to lock the doors again. Okay? Maybe we're going to see Jesus do that trick. I don't know why they did that, but they locked the doors again out of that fear. Because we all, for me, we need that reminder. Jesus came and stood among them, in the midst of them, and he said, peace be with you. See, the promise that God has us, for each one of us, is God will. He will give you and bring you that peace. But he wants it to be with you wherever you go. Today's a new day. Friday was excruciating. Friday was a loss. Friday was tough. But there's a peace that only God can give that can bring you through the most difficult of all times. And he wants it to be with you. And he wants to send us out using that. Which takes us to the third thing. Matthew chapter 28, verse 1. It says, in teaching them. So whenever Jesus was teaching, he would have a sit down. He would sit down and he would say, hey, I'm going to talk to all of you guys about this really important thing I'm going to say. Have a discussion. Go back. We're going to have this discussion. We're going to sit down. He sits down. And he's reached out to teach them for the disciples and for all of us. And he says this. He said, teaching them to obey, to follow, to live according to what God teaches us. To be to obey everything I have commanded you. Everything. It's tough to keep track of it all the time, right? Not just 10 commandments. There's 600 plus commandments. How do I know that was a commandment, not was a commandment? Stop here for a second. Jesus said this. Go and love others as I have loved others. That was his command. Go and love others as I have loved others. So if you're not sure, go and dive into the words of Jesus. Go and dive into the Gospels and look and see how he cared for people. How he met people in their struggles. How he found them when they had loss. How he knew that there were going to be things that, oh my goodness, what if people find out? And we all have those. He said, love others as I have loved others. Love others as I have loved you. And he said this. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the day and the end of the age. And this is his final process, or final promise, excuse me. And I get all of a sudden. This is his final promise. You'll never be alone. You'll never be alone. He says, I am with you until the end of the age. Man, I'm an empty nester. My kids were all here. And now they're like gone. You'll never be alone. My kids are growing up so fast. I wanted to slow down. I wanted to stop. I thought I enjoyed it so much. Now all of a sudden they're all driving and they're like talking about going away for school and those other things. God's not going to leave you nor forsake you ever. Ever. And he wants to bring his peace with you, to be with you, to carry with you so that you can see that even though a chapter ends, that a new chapter begins with him. We can all place that struggle that we have personally in there. I've lost a family member. I'm divorced. I came home one day and everything was packed up and gone. We can fill in that blank. And Jesus promises each one of us that I will be with you always. When you're discouraged, when you're alone, when you're thinking, I can't get through this day, he says, my peace I bring to you in the midst of all those struggles. Because Easter wasn't about pain. Easter wasn't about death. Easter wasn't about an ending. It was about life and hope and a new beginning. And a promise that he takes to each one of us and gives us freely. Today's a new day for each one of you. Today's a new day for me. You're going to spend some time later with your family. Talk about these things. Have a discussion with Can we rename names? Yes, we can. Have those discussions. Mom, Grandma, have you ever felt that peace? Yeah, I have. What happened? The world got in the way. But I went back and found that peace today. And I want to live that peace amongst you every day. Why? Because it's the only time that I felt that peace that God promises. And I know that He is with me to the end of the day. And He's sending me to go share that peace with others. Grab a hold of it. Live it. And may His peace be with you today. Dear Lord, as we come to you, God, at this time, Lord, I thank you for your promises. Lord, I know next week we're going to dive into the final week of this, and God, I want to invite everyone here to be back, to be a part of this. Because, God, we're here to celebrate life. We all have these struggles. And many times the struggles we have are just because we don't stop long enough to recognize you. God, we want to believe. Sometimes we feel like we believe, but we never stop long enough to recognize you. So, Lord, for those here today that don't know these promises, help them to know that today is a new day, that their past is in the past, and they can pass by that. They can hold on to life and love. And that, God, whenever those struggles arise, they can stop long enough to hear your voice say, my peace be with you. And Lord, the discouragement and the loneliness and the fear and the what if and the what's next, all those things that we can't answer, that we can't figure out, that we can rest and know that you are with each of us, even to the end of our days. God, help us to grab hold of life. Help us to rest in you. It's in your name that we pray. Mike's just going to play here for a little bit, for maybe like a minute or two, just to kind of take everything we talk about, hold on to God's promises. So we want you to leave with those more longer. We want to send you out so you can share those with others, with your family, with one another. Now, just take a moment here, and we'll get up in just a little bit, and we'll sing this final song together. And we'd love to invite you back next week for our final week of Would We Invite Jesus to our church. But we thank you so much for being with us today.